Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Real Talk. For many people, faith is the bedrock for how we lead our lives. Changing one's faith can be a critical juncture in life. All of our guests today have been impacted by the decision to change faith. To discuss the consequences of this decision, I'm joined by our studio audience and our guest panelists. Let me begin by introducing our guests today. First, we have Rubina Nasir, who is in charge of the New Converts Department for the Ladies Auxiliary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in the UK. Next, Bushra Ahmed, who converted to Islam 25 years ago. We are also joined by Michelle Rahman, a UK healthcare commissioner who converted 15 years ago. Finally, we have Safia Salam. Safia's parents converted to Islam in the 1960s from Jewish backgrounds and were very active in the community in America. I want to start the conversation with our panelists today. Michelle, you've been Muslim for 15 years. What difference has Islam made in your life?
Well, as a Caribbean woman, I was very used to going out quite a lot, most weekends with my friends. And going out, I would say, to parties, because that's what young Jamaican girls did when they were growing up. What I have learnt most definitely is that I can live a good, sober and happy life and put my energy into things that bring me closer, nearer to God. And this really has been the thing that my parents have noticed. They've noticed that I have become at peace with myself and focused on obedience to God. So this would be the main change. And it has been quite a challenge. I still have many of the same friends that I grew up with who still go to parties. And now one of the hardest things that they found was that I would say no when they invited me. And now they know not to invite me. They still tell me where they've been. And I still talk to them about my life and how my life has changed and how I am focusing on my outings, looking at the beauty of nature. So you can still have fulfillment in life without the weekend parties.
Speaking of change, Safia, your parents converted at a time of great social change in the US in the 60s. What attracted them to Islam at that point?
Well, they both came from very strict Jewish background, and they went to synagogue. They were involved, but I do remember my mother talking about that she couldn't find that closeness with God. They were looking for a one-to-one relationship with God, and it seemed that things were based more on the person and that they were afraid of what the other people thought, and that's why they went. And it was something that just didn't sit right with them. And although they loved the Holy Book, they loved praying, they just couldn't find that right relationship, which they then did find with Islam. And it was great political change. They were political activists. They went to Berkeley at the time in California and were involved with all of that. And I think it was just an involvement trying to find that one thing that would bring it all together, something that would help humanity in the end. That's what they were very, very realist in the fact that they just wanted something that would help their lives and the future of humanity.
Rubina, hearing these two kind of stories, do you find that there's any common themes in why people convert? Why do people come to Islam from whatever background they have?
Right, people who come to Islam are from various backgrounds. There are some who come because they were searching for the truth and were basically dissatisfied. They were basically dissatisfied with what religion they were following. So I think Islam and Ahmadiyyat paved the way for them towards what they were looking for.
Okay. Bushra, would you agree with that? Was this your way to Islam, hearing what you've just heard?
Yeah, absolutely. My personal experience was I come back from a Catholic background, and my parents, my dad especially, was a strict Catholic believer. But every Sunday we'll go to Mass, and every Saturday we had classes, to learn about religion. And it's actually thanks to one of the nuns there that changed my way of thinking, because the things she told me and things I was told at home, they were two different things. So it took my mind away from Christianity.
Okay, Safia, what is it about somebody that makes them want to convert, though? You talk about your parents seeking change, wanting something different, but when you're raised in such a strict Christian Jewish background, how do you then, what is within you that makes you want to just change all of that?
I think that it's somewhat easier to convert from a religious background where God is already in your life. So then you're searching for that. There's something missing, that you are aware of God and you are aware of praying to God, but something doesn't connect. You don't get the answers that you want, and you're not having that relationship you're looking for. And it takes, I think, Allah creates in everyone, there's different personalities, and I think He creates in some people a real want and a need to find it. And those are the people that are guided to find it and then spread the message to everyone else. And I think it does take a particular person with a very steel backbone and an idea in their head of what they want, and then they find it and they're guided towards it.
I want to go to the audience now. What you've just heard from our panelists. What about all of you, the ones of you that are converts? What attracted you to Islam? What was it within your background that made you want to change? Yes, back here.
I don't think it was anything in my background personally that made me want to change, but when I started finding out about Islam, it was it's more of a feeling. It's a spiritual decision. It's not necessarily something you decide with your head. You can go on researching and, for years and years, but when you attain like a feeling inside, a comfort that you know that this decision is important and one that you have to make, then I think the decision is made for you. I think it's just a feeling really inside.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
My family were actually Sunni Muslims, but I think it was just more of the misconceptions about Ahmadiyyat, and I think the biggest challenge for me was about Hazrat Isa, and I didn't know enough. And I think when I heard about Ahmadiyyat, I think it enabled me to go further to find out and clarify all the misconceptions about Islam, and even just to reaffirm things for myself, in terms of Hazrat Isa, the Messiah, and just general things about Islam.
Yeah. I want to take that point and ask Michelle and Bushra, actually, coming from a Christian background, how do you reconcile the theological differences, especially, say, with Prophet Jesus and other doctrines?
So for me, it has been that I've been raised to have fear in God. This is principally the teaching that I got from a very young age. And it is very important to feel that you have found the truth and that you are following in your religion, your chosen religion, with sincerity. Because otherwise what you're doing is fooling nobody but yourself. So for me, and an audience member mentioned it there, it is about having that true feeling. Without that feeling, you can't get that connection, which is such a beautiful connection with Allah. So for me, it is truly about seeking truth and seeking peace. And I feel I have certainly found that in Ahmadiyyat.
Yeah, how about you, Bushra? Did you have to reconcile the theological differences?
No, not really. I agree with Michelle. She's right. It has to be an inner feeling. It is not something you pick up and decide overnight. It took me a long time to, accept Ahmadiyyat. Even after accepting it, I wondered, did I make the right decision or not? But definitely since converting to Ahmadiyyat, my life has changed enormously, and it's one of the best decisions.
In what ways has your life changed, would you say?
In every way, in the way I think, the way I behave, the way for example, my parents, like I said, they're Catholics. In the beginning, they didn't want to know. Yeah. But now I've got 9 brothers and sisters, and now they say my family stands out, my family is the best from all of them. Yeah. So it's made a big difference, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Did you want to?
I think from the theological point of view, one of the biggest questions is about Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. And I know from the Jewish background where the Messiah was not accepted by the Jews, if you are Jewish and you are looking for that Messiah, that is the clearest answer that is given by Ahmadiyyat, the most sensible answer for Isa alayhi salam, his life and his eventual death. It's so clear given to us. So anyone searching for that answer, particularly Catholics or Jews, it is given so clearly. This is also one of the main reasons that my parents went from being Sunni to Ahmadiyyat, is because that answer for Hazrat Isa and then the Messiah presented to them in our modern time is such a natural progression, and it's given so clearly that this is a real draw for someone who is looking for that answer.
Right. Was it not a big leap for them to go from a Jewish background all the way to Islam, when you think about the middle there, the Christian, if you look in the timeline of religions?
It is a leap, but it's also a natural progression. If you look at the way that the Jewish religion is, and the prayers and the rituals, is very close to Islam, but it's almost like a rough form of Islam. It seems to have been honed to perfection by Islam, so then it makes sense that, yes, this is possible. And that it's difficult in the Jewish religion because there's so many rituals and so many prayers. It's hard to live that life and have your other life as well. And Islam has balanced it so beautifully that it's actually a natural progression.
Right. Speaking of that progression, Rabina, do you find that that converts try other faiths before they come to Islam?
I think they do, because over the period of many years that I have been supporting New Ahmadis, I have been talking to them, and some of them, because they have been searching for the truth, so they have obviously looked into other religions too, and they have been studying other religions, and they have come to the conclusion that Islam is the real religion that they were looking for. And also, if I may just talk to you with regards to theology and how it affects a Muslim, I can talk to you about a new sister who became Ahmadi, and who was actually from a very strict Christian background, and in fact the parents were missionaries. And when she told her parents that she had accepted Islam, her parents obviously did not take it very kindly, and the first reaction was, "So you have rejected what we gave you?" And the answer to this was that, "No, I have not rejected, but I have accepted what you have given, and more than that." So because Islam encompasses all the previous religions and does not reject the previous prophets, it is, the person saw this as a continuation of religions.
Okay, I want to go to the audience now. Did any of you try other faiths before you came to Islam, or did you study any other faiths? Yeah, okay.
When I found out about Islam, I had some Muslim friends who weren't Ahmadis, and I started to get interested in Islam, and I found the Qur'an in a bookshop, and I started reading, and I was actually surprised that Jesus was mentioned and Joseph was mentioned, prophets, peace be on them. And because I thought so far that Islam is a totally different religion from Christianity, it's got nothing to do, Allah is a different God, and I really didn't have a clue. And then my journey, actually, I started reading about Judaism, I started reading about Buddhism and Hinduism, and I wanted to learn more about Islam, and I wasn't sure where to go. And I thought in my country in Switzerland, Zurich is the biggest town. I thought, let me find something in the telephone directory. I looked under Islam, I found a number, and the number was of our Ahmadiyya mosque. So I thought Allah just directed me to the right place. And then the person who spoke to me on the phone, he sent me a lot of literature. And when I started reading, it just everything made sense to me, even about the covering of the head, because until then I thought, there's no way that I'm ever going to cover my head. Yeah. And now it's the opposite. There's no way that I would ever go out of the house without covering my head. So all the literature I read about from the Ahmadiyya mosque, it just, I could just straight away believe it. And in the beginning, I was a bit, because there weren't that many Swiss other Muslims there, and I started to go to other Muslim gatherings where there were Swiss Muslim women, but I wasn't satisfied there. Because of the concept of Jesus, that's one of the things that convinced me as well, was the way the non-Ahmadis believe and the way we Ahmadis believe. I believed it straight away.
Yeah. Anybody else? Did you try anything else? Did you study any other religions before Islam? Yeah. Can you pass the mic up here, please?
As a teenager, I was seeking truth and peace, and I joined some friends in going to their church. But I found that it wasn't for me. There was a lot of singing, and the priest, it was one way. He was talking one way. There was no questioning of the understanding of the Bible and the concept of Jesus. It didn't attract me. And then I found Islam englobed all religions and held high respect for all prophets of all religions, coming from a non-practicing Hindu background. And it was the logical and clarity of the understanding of Hazrat Isa's life that drew me towards Ahmadiyyat.
Sophia, I want to come back to you now. I'm hearing what the audience have said, and from your own experiences, Islam is the largest growing faith in the world. What do you think it is about Islam that inspires people to come towards?
I think it's the one-to-one relationship with God to start with, that you really can have this true relationship in your life all the time, that it's always there. It's not just you go to church and you leave and it's over, or you go to synagogue or whatever you do. It's always with you day in and day out, and it's a real love and a real understanding. And also the connection with the people in the community. And I think that some people are very attracted to the separation of men and women because what you see, and I remember my mother saying this, is one of the things that attracted her, is that you can develop a real friendship and relationship with another woman that's only based on you being women and your religion and your children. There's nothing there, and the men can form a relationship. So it's separate. For example, if you go to a mixed and a friendship you have with a woman who you're also friends with her husband, there's always this worry, this underlying insecurity where it doesn't exist in the religion. And this is a real draw for people looking for that sincerity and that true in all areas of life.
That's a really good point, and I want to come back to that in a minute when we talk about some of the adjustments that converts have to make when they join Islam. But I want to talk first to Michelle and Bushra and ask you about the reaction that you had when you did convert to Islam from your loved ones. What was that?
Well, mine personally, my parents were very angry. They couldn't understand how I could reject the religion that I was brought up with to Ahmadiyyat. All they knew it was as she converted to Islam, and they didn't know the difference between Ahmadiyyat and Sunnis. So they stopped talking to me. I didn't go to the house, and that did hurt a lot because they're my parents. But yeah, you know, all my family, my sisters still kept in touch, but my brothers, my dad, my mum, nobody wanted to know. They say, you're going wrong, you're going to go to hell, you know, you're not going to have any peace in your life. So, yeah, it was really hard.
Yeah, Michelle, what about you?
For me, also very similar. I mean, my parents, but particularly my grandparents, were very clear in their responsibility as they saw it to tell me that I would die in hellfire and brimstone, and that will be my fate, because the one way to God is through Christianity, Pentecostal Christianity, and very prescriptive on that point, that there was no other way to heaven. And that was their feeling and their real fear. How could I be angry with them? Because this is exactly what they believed. And they felt that as my parents, they needed to be the person responsible to guide me back to Pentecostal Christianity. My mother was always much calmer and recognizing that she raised me to be a follower of truth. And to this day, I know that in her heart, she knows I've made the right choice, and inshallah, she will follow.
Right, yeah. Sophia, you're a second-generation Muslim. Does it get any better, the family reaction over the generations? What is your experience now?
I can't comment. I mean, all I can say is I think because of what's happening in the world, people are more aware of Islam now. In the time of my parents, there was very little awareness, and it was a big shock. And also her mother, my mother's mother, stopped speaking to her for about a year because she converted her sister as well, so that didn't go over very well. But then they recognize over time the change, and they realize it's a good thing. And I think that if enough time goes by and if it's handled correctly, that it's not pushed by the person who converted, just allowed a natural progression for the family to see how much they've changed. Many, many times the family comes around, although they might not convert, they might not be happy about it, they do realize the change. And I think awareness in the world today of Islam is so much greater that people at least know what the religion is, and they do know. And even though it might be a negative, the person who is converted can always explain what the true Islam is and why they were converted. And from that point of view, I think it's better that the awareness is there.
Yeah.
So,
what about the audience? Does anybody have an experience that they'd like to share?
Sorry, on the point that Baji Safia made, I think she's absolutely right. That when you first, as a convert, go to your parents, it wouldn't matter if it was Islam or any other religion. It's something unknown. It's something different from what you've had in your childhood, and it's something that's outside maybe even the understanding of your parents. So as a parent, if my child came and told me they've taken up something that I knew nothing about, I would always be concerned, and that's part of parenting. And it's absolutely right that over time, the parents, I remember my parents are both English, and they converted to Ahmadiyyat in 1971, and they got married to each other, and they invited my grandparents to the wedding. Unfortunately, my grandparents couldn't come, but my grandmother sent my uncle to make sure that my dad didn't sell her for camels or something like that. So it's just a sort of an unknown. It's something that they don't know. They didn't know what's going to happen to their child. I think over time you show that you're the same person, or you're improved in your behavior, and you show that you're not going to radically change overnight. You're still the key person that you were before. And I think, inshallah, the family would support you.
Yeah, that's a good point. There were a couple of points in the back as well. If we can pass the mic back.
I just wanted to say I come from an atheist background, not a religious one. So my parents brought me up thinking, you believe in yourself, you can do it. And they saw gradually changes when I came on holidays to Germany. And with the time, I didn't really have to tell them that I converted, because they saw with the time me putting on the long coat, the long scarf. And it was a topic we actually never talked about at home, because every time my dad started talking about it, we ended up having an argument. So in that way, my parents actually never accepted me as being a Muslim, but they stay in contact with me. I go to Germany on holidays, they tolerate basically us being there, they love the grandchildren, but they actually never accepted me becoming an Ahmadi. But it never stopped me performing my faith, believing in myself and Alamia.
That's great. That's a good point. Another one back here.
I come from a Sunni background, and as most parents are, they were quite protective of me. They taught me everything I need to know about Islam. But I found that growing up, there were a lot of unanswered questions, such as the issue about Jesus and other religions as well. I mean, was Hinduism a completely made-up religion and things like that? So I found that once I learnt more about the actual Ahmadiyya Jamaat view on those parts, I actually felt that everything tied in together. My parents weren't too happy about my conversion, but I think that over time I had to show that I hadn't changed as a person myself. I was still their daughter, but I have to act as an ambassador to my religion, and I have changed myself in certain aspects, but I'm still the same person, and that's what I found.
Yeah, that's a good point. Michelle, I want to ask you, hearing what everybody has been saying here, what steps can a convert take in making sure that their family is maybe not accepting, but at least comfortable with the decision that they've made? Is there anything that you can do?
It's simply not trying to be something that you're not, and being true to your faith. When you convert, it's about not taking this bit and leaving that bit. It's about wholly supplicating yourself to Allah. And through that, of course, you're rightly guided, and your parents will see that light, and that light shines. And you may not see it yourself, but they raised you, and they know how you change and how you progress. And my parents truly believe that I found the right path. They've seen me, and they've seen the change in me. They've seen me prosper by the grace of Allah in many parts of my life. So, you need no more than that, in my view.
Musha, what about challenges from friends or work colleagues? Have you found that to be a problem at all? With friends or...
I converted when I was very young. I was 18. So my dad, like I said, he was a strict Catholic. We weren't even allowed to go out with friends. We had no, like, what they call nightlife. We were at home, you know, from school to home or college, whatever it was. We weren't allowed to have any friends. So I had no bad influences from friends because I didn't really have any close friends. It's only the people I actually mixed with. And because I got married so young, I wasn't actually working at the time. So, no.
What about any of you? Are there any experiences in work or with friends at school because of your conversion to Islam? Yeah, here in the middle.
I converted while I was at university, I think just finishing, and I think my friends, they had a huge issue with even me looking into it, and it was like a big battle to actually even just to say what is Ahmadiyyat, and it was just a huge war in terms of trying to get them to even talk about it or even look with me to say let's look into it. There was loads of misconceptions, and they were just adamant of trying to convince me not to even look into Ahmadiyyat. So I think in terms of friendship, it was difficult for me. But now, after I got married, after I've started to get involved with the Jamaat, they've seen a huge difference in me, and they even said to me that what we said before. We've seen a big change in you. We've seen a big change in the way you lead your life with your husband and your family. And they've actually sort of taken a backtrack. But it was very, very difficult to even talk about any issues that I had, or I wanted to look into anything about Ahmadiyyat.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think for me, my friends, it was a journey I went through on my own. So when I explained it to them, they were quite shocked. But fortunately, I've maintained those friends that I had before I converted, but you can see the changes that happen. Like, I won't participate in some of the things that they do anymore, obviously, because that would be going against my faith. So in that sense, relationships with friends have changed quite a lot, but I think they recognise that you're still the same person who they can enjoy being with and talking to. So in that respect, you can maintain it. But there are aspects that have to change and maybe fall away.
I have actually found that, like, my work colleagues at the time were much more open than my own parents were, and they're actually the ones I could talk to, and they were the ones who were actually asking the questions I would ask my parents. I would expect my parents to say. So, and even my friends are much more open to all these. And as I said, I still have the same friends as I had 10, 15 years ago. They are still talking with me, they're coming and visit. And there has actually, in a way, not much changed in our friendship.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point. There was a last point up here.
I think it depends a lot where you are. I mean, here, alhamdulillah, we're lucky to be in London. There's a huge mixed community of people from all cultures and all backgrounds. But for me, I see a real difference in the attitudes between my two sets of grandparents. I have one set of grandparents who live in a very rural area that's very English with no outside influence at all. It's basically, there are no immigrants, there's no, everybody's English. So for me to go there as an English woman and wear a scarf is something it's a big deal for them. And that's something they have to adjust to. And we've discussed it, and they understand the reasons and the why I'm doing that. But it is something that they've had to adjust to. Whereas, and also on my wedding, that particular set of grandparents did not feel comfortable coming in the mosque because it was outside their experience. They were afraid. Whereas my grandfather on the other side lives in Birmingham, where there's a huge mixed population, lots of Sikhs and Muslims of all different varieties. And he was really comfortable. It's never ever been an issue for him, the faith or the way I dress or the way I am. And he very happily came to the wedding. So I think where you live makes a big difference as well in this country.
Right. That's a good point. We're going to have to leave the discussion for now, but join us after the break when we talk about some of the adjustments that converts have to make once they do join Islam, and also how we can use their experiences to bring other people towards Islam. Join me after the break.
The Review of Religions is one of the longest-running religious magazines. In print since 1902, it continues to play an important role in presenting the noble teachings of Islam, reflecting its rational, harmonious and inspiring nature. It features articles and viewpoints on different religions, making religion and religious philosophy accessible to a wider readership. The Review of Religions was founded by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, who claimed on the basis of divine revelation that he was the promised Messiah and Mahdi, whose advent had been foretold by the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and by the scriptures of other faiths. The annual subscription of this unique and enlightening magazine is just £15 per year or $30. To receive your copy of the Review of Religions, visit our website at www.reviewofreligions.org, where you can browse past issues and subscribe online, or contact us by email to info@reviewofreligions.org. The Review of Religions, a unique magazine of religious thought.
Welcome back to Real Talk. Today we've been discussing why people convert to Islam and the challenges this raises in their lives. I want to go back to the panel now and talk about the adjustments that converts have to make. Michelle, is it a gradual adjustment? Many people say that Islam is a way of life, that that Islam tells you what to do, what not to do. Did you adjust quite easily, or did it take some time?
It certainly took some time. It was a gradual adjustment. Certainly the wearing of the scarf was probably the hardest, I'd say. I used to have a scarf around my neck, so I went from no scarf to a scarf around my neck, and in my mind I had told myself that that was parda. And then the more I became, I suppose, understanding religion and understanding the purpose of parda, my parda started creeping up and creeping up. One of the big things that I used to do when I moved to wearing my scarf was I'd go to my mum's home and I would be absolutely petrified that I didn't want to offend her. So I'd take the scarf down around my neck at the door as soon as I'd pulled into on her road, and I'd go into the house. And one day I just forgot. And I went in, and do you know, she didn't notice. She didn't notice. She welcomed me in the same way. So it was my psychological transformation. And there I'd say that my transformation was gradual.
Yeah. What about you, Bushra? What about some of the adjustments that you felt you had to make, especially with, say, for example, the headscarf or even eating certain foods?
Mm-hmm. Well, food wasn't a problem because I'm allergic to pork anyway. So the scarf, yeah, I agree, it was a gradual thing. In the beginning, same like Michelle, I wore a scarf around my front, and then slowly, it was like, you know, you wear it loosely around your head. And then the last couple of years, so I've actually been tying it, like I'm wearing it at the moment. And as far as my parents are concerned, yeah, I agree with Michelle. When I went to their house, I always felt very uncomfortable, you know, what they're going to think about me, what they're going to say. And there's one instance that will always stick out in my head. I went there and I wore hijab, and I just went in as I usually do to any place. And my mum said, "Why are you wearing a scarf?" And instantly, my dad said, "Leave her, it suits her, it looks nice on her." Yeah, and he was one that was so against me converting in the first place. So, you know, that made me feel really happy inside, you know. And then ever since then, my mum's never said anything to me about my hijab or whether I wear burqa or anything. So, alhamdulillah, I've been very lucky.
Yeah, Safia, your parents, the 1960s in America, going from that lifestyle to all of a sudden Islam.
It was very, I think, as far as the outerwear, the inner struggle came quickly because they had found what they wanted. Yeah. So that was easy. It was the outer manifestation. I know that my mother experimented with many, many different looks. And it wasn't, I think, until her children were born that she had decided, and then she moved on to wearing a proper niqab and burqa, sort of from Rabwa, from Pakistan, which she wore for many years. And I remember clearly growing up, her wearing that, which was a real big shock because we lived in small town America at the time. And she never gave it up. She wore that for many years. It wasn't until later on that it sort of changed to maybe a little more Western, but still the same coat and scarf. Yeah. So it is gradual finding what you're comfortable with and what suits you.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Any comments from the audience about the adjustments that you had to make or your loved ones have had to make? Let's come up here.
I think my husband, when he converted, he had two different aspects that he had to battle with. He had an emotional side, which was his faith, and then he also had the logical side. And the majority of the time, the logical aspect was the not eating pork, the not drinking, the not going out with certain groups of friends that he may have associated with before. And I think he said that his logical side seemed to actually come far easier, because the more he battled with it, the more he looked at the scientific reasons behind why you shouldn't eat pork. And he knew that if he did go out and he drank, he knew how he felt the morning after. Yeah. So it just became, I think, easy for him to understand that the logic behind not eating pork and not drinking alcohol, that was very simple. Yeah. I think since we've got married, I think that the female aspect of it, me doing barda around his mother started asking questions about, why do you do it? I'm going to have grandchildren in my house one day. How are we going to make this adjustment work? And it's fantastic, the questions that she asks, and the more she's adapting to it, over and above what he's had to adapt to as a woman, she's had to embrace more.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. Back here.
I think there are so many changes that coming from an English background that you go through. So wearing the scarf is probably the most difficult, but it's just one of many. Like I've seen, I've noticed, you met the lady just mentioned having alcohol in your house. Like that was an issue for me with my parents coming to my house and them understanding that that wasn't something that that could happen in my house then. But also just some of the cultural changes, language differences, the clothes that we wear. There's many, many different things, but if you look at it, it's kind of, I try to merge the two and do some of both, try to wear, I'll wear English clothes, but then I'll also wear Pakistani clothes like a shalwar kameez. And so you have the benefit of these two cultures which have beautiful traditions, both of them. So you try to merge them, and that can work too.
Yep. You had a comment back here.
With me, it was also gradual. It was like I found out about Islam. I hadn't converted yet, but I just started disliking pork. I couldn't eat pork anymore. I just didn't like it. And with alcohol as well. Alcohol, I'm so glad now that I don't need to have alcohol to have, to have a happy day or whatever. And the scarf here was the biggest challenge. I remember when I put it on the first time and I was walking through a high street and I thought everybody was looking at me, although they didn't, but that was just my feeling. I thought everybody was looking at me. Yeah. And my parents, they gradually accepted it as well, because first they thought I'm in one of those sects and they were really scared and they thought I'm going to have a husband who's going to beat me up. That's the kind of thinking they had. And although we weren't very practicing Catholics, but it was more traditional, like my mother said, my relatives said, why are you giving up what your fathers believed in? And the first thing that came into my mind, that's exactly what the Qur'an says. Why are you rejecting what your forefathers believed in? And I tried to explain to them many times, but then I realized after I got married and they saw me, I moved to this country and they only came after a few years for the first time here, but now they come once or twice a year and they're really happy, and the grandchildren love them, they love the grandchildren.
Yeah. Just want to take one more point from the audience and then go on.
I think in terms of having the challenges was for me, I think coming to Jamaat, and actually it was a big shock for me in the beginning. After I had my daughter, I think it really homed in on me that doing parda and setting an example was something that that was very necessary. I think parda was a big issue for me. If you'd asked me 4 years ago if I was going to do parda, I would have said to you, there's no way in hell. But once I had my daughter, I thought, I need to set an example, and it's a form of silent tabligh as well, the way you carry yourself. I did a lot of dua to sort of encourage myself to wear a scarf. One of the dreams that I had was that I was in a line and it was the Day of Judgment and we were walking up, and just very casually, and I was like the fourth person, and I was walking up as myself, and I said to the person in front of me, we're going up to Allah Ta'ala, can you give me a scarf or something? So I was just about to put it round, and Allah Ta'ala came up to me and he said to me, no, take it off. He said, that's the way you are, so come as you are. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I could actually feel myself, in my sleep, that I started to tremble. And I got so scared, and I said, no, please forgive me. You know, I really want to wear a scarf in front of you. And he said, no, you had the time to do it, and you didn't do it then, so come as you are. And I think the next day, or even that day, I just put it on. And since then, it's been so natural to me to do parda and to get involved in the Jamaat. And, you know, a lot of dua is essential for anything.
Yeah. Safia, as a daughter of converts, did you ever feel that your parents were afraid that maybe you yourself would try and find yourself another faith? And how did they encourage you to stay?
Absolutely. I mean, parents always, that's the hardest thing, especially when you're a convert, is how you're going to raise your children in a way that is a good balance, because when you're a convert, you still have your own identity. So my parents were very, very American. They, you know, they loved their country. They were very patriotic. And, you know, how do you keep your children with that and with Islam? And I can remember, you know, sort of growing up, it's very funny. We found a tape the other day with my father and my elder brother when he was maybe 3 years old. And it must have been his birthday or something, and they were trying to get him to say something on the tape. And the 3 things they had him say was the Atfal Pledge, off by heart, the American anthem that we sing, and the Boy Scout Pledge. And these were the 3 things, and that it just so clearly showed the balance that they were so involved. Jamaat, my father was always involved in the Boy Scouts. He led the Boy Scouts, and they were very involved in those American patriotic things like the 4th of July, which is just the freedom of America from the British. But I can remember us having the fireworks, but also having congregational prayers outside. So it was an ability to let us know that we had an identity and could enjoy these things as our culture, but do it in a lovely Islamic way. And I think the freedom of that and giving the balance and the understanding that don't always listen to what everyone is telling you, you can do this, you can't do that. Study it and judge for yourself. Is that a good thing? Is that an Islamic thing? So keep that as part of yourself and do the things that are Islamic and have fun and enjoy it. And that was always instilled in us so that we were able to have that balance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm wondering from the audience, we have some children of converts in the audience. What was that like for you growing up? Did you find that there was differences in the way that maybe you were brought up with compared to other Muslims because your parents were converts? Yeah.
One of the differences I think I found is that my mother, sometimes she was learning the same time as me because she didn't have the knowledge. Yeah. So she converted before I was born, but obviously it takes a very long time to have enough knowledge to teach your children. So even now I still see that she's learning and adjusting things. So we have a lot of discussions even now when we're both learning things.
I want to come back to the panel. Bushra, do you think that coming from one faith and then moving on to another faith and becoming a Muslim, do you think that gives you any insight into issues that society is facing that other people might not have that insight?
Yeah, personally, yeah, where I was brought up, the way they're thinking, the way they behave is different, and coming into Ahmadiyyat, everything makes sense, you know, why there's a reason for everything. Whatever Allah's commanded, there's a reason behind everything. Yeah. And it really opens your eyes into what reality is, you know, exactly why Allah's saying whatever He says to us is for our own good, our own benefit.
Yeah. Michelle, do you think it gives you any special desire to spread the message because you've come to it? Do you want to then bring others to it?
Absolutely. I mean, Ahmadiyyat in Islam is a rational religion. And, you know, one of the things that I remember very clearly is I was taught and brought up with this concept of speaking in tongues. And, you know, only special people could speak in tongues. And when they could, they would be there at the first in the queue to get into paradise. And this is what I was taught. When I went to my first jalsa and heard the unity of people from all around the world, different countries, speaking, you know, doing the pledge, that to me really embodied my understanding of what speaking in tongues is. And I've been able to share that with my siblings. Now, you know, now when we talk about speaking in tongues, I can tell them about my experience. And, you know, hopefully, inshallah, they'll come to Jalsa and hear that for themselves. But that was, you know, one of the big things that I felt that I could share that translated from, you know, when I was a Pentecostal Christian.
Sophie, you wanted to add something?
I think that when you become a convert, or when you accept this religion, it gives you a sensitivity that you may not have had before, and it makes you sort of see the world and view people differently, and you can really begin to understand. Alhamdulillah, it gives you a special ability, everyone who's converted, to give an understanding of other people. And I think everyone might agree that you suddenly find that people are coming to you for advice, that you think, why are they asking me? You know, sort of other mothers of children who are not Muslim will often come and ask me advice on something that I would think they would ask someone else, but I think that they sense there's a real understanding and a real sort of a calm balance that you only achieve because you found the answer, and it manifests itself in so many areas of life that people are drawn to you for that reason, although they don't know why, but they are drawn to you and they will come to you for many different issues.
What about the audience, from your experience of converting or being approached or finding Islam for the first time? What are the ways that we can convey that message to other people?
For me, I had a friend who was able to answer all my questions. So a lot of the questions were around Hazrat Isa al-Islam. And when I was reading the books of the Promised Messiah, I would have quite a lot of questions. And then I took these questions back to my friend, and she was doing tabligh to me. And the way she answered those questions was so complete, and it just all made sense. And I just felt, yeah, it's logical. And so I think to have a lot of knowledge is important. It's not always, you know, the key thing, but to have knowledge and to be able to satisfy somebody's curiosity and just give them assurance, you know, that this is the correct thing, that really helped me.
Anybody else? Yeah.
With me, I went to the mosque, I got the literature, I already started believing in what I read, and then they told me that there's actually a Swiss couple who both converted to Islam and Ahmadiyya more than 20 years ago, and I started meeting them, although they lived quite far, but I used to spend every weekend, and I think it was their example that I could follow. And she taught me the namaz, and she taught me all the du'as, and that's one of the first things I actually loved about Islam, that there's a du'a for basically every occasion. And also the cleanliness about Islam, that's one of the other things I thought that really attracted me to Islam. And it was their example. I mean, they've had 5 children at that time, and the way they taught their children and the way they lived a very simple life in a small mountain town in Switzerland, and they were doing a lot of tabligh, and it was very important to have somebody who's come from the same background as me. To me, that was very important.
Yeah. So knowledge and setting a good example. So are there any other thoughts from the panel even of how do we inspire people to come to Islam, given the experiences that all of you have had?
Can I just say a few things? First of all, I just wanted to add to your comment about adjustments, that I have spoken to, speaking of sisters who have embraced Islam from non-Islamic backgrounds, that practicing Islam is not impossible. They feel that their desire is so, the desire to please Allah is so intense that they find that it's quite easy to, from not praying at all to praying 5 times a day. They say that they manage that quite well. And also one of the things about, giving the message, people who have accepted Islam and Ahmadiyyat, they are always concerned about their parents and the other siblings. They feel that they have been blessed. And Allah has shown them the light, and there is always this urge and this the thought in them that they have to somehow pass this on, and they do this through prayers. I'm sure that most of the audience here and the panel will agree that it is one of the things that they find quite painful, that their parents and their siblings have not accepted Islam.
Michelle, what do you think? How can you and the rest of our audience here inspire people to come to Islam, given your experiences?
I think it's simple. In my view, I feel that it is about feeling able to talk about why you converted, about the rationality particularly, about some of the things that we talked about today, the reason behind purdah, why we don't drink alcohol, why we don't want to have an intoxicated brain. These things are so simple and so rational, and it feels almost greedy not to share that with somebody else. You know, so it just feels that whoever I meet, we talk about me being a Muslim, we move on to me being an Ahmadi, and it's been, and particularly over the last 2 years, it has been very critical for me to not just say I'm a Muslim, but to say I'm an Ahmadi Muslim, and to make that distinction. And I feel that with passion, and then I don't feel as if I've done my job until I've handed over the conditions of bed that explains to somebody why I have chosen to be an Ahmadi Muslim.
Yeah. Sophia, do you have anything to add to this? And especially, how do we spread this message in the current state of the world when there's talk of Islamophobia going around?
I think you have to remember to not sink inside yourself and your own life and only exist within yourself and your own life. You've made this huge step, and it is a struggle living it every day. And it's not just for converts, it's for all Ahmadi Muslims to go about your life in such a cheerful, giving, open manner where every day that you live, you are thinking about someone else in that day. And you're thinking about, you know, when I'm with someone, am I presenting myself in a positive, cheerful manner? Am I listening to what they're saying about their life, and do I care about them? Ahmadiyyat is very much about caring about humanity and what's happening with the other person, not yourself. And if that's such a simple thing to portray in your life, to always smile, you know, to be cheerful, to be positive, and to be very confident in yourself that you know you have the answer, even if you think you might be able to not say it properly, but you do have the answer, and you may very well have the answer for their lives as well. So that when you are speaking to someone, even on a very basic, everyday level, that you are listening to what they are saying and that you show you are caring about them. And that is the first step to them suddenly turning around saying, this is a different person.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to go to the audience one last time. Just some final thoughts. What is your advice to those that might be seeking the truth and maybe they're shy to take that first step? Yeah, let's go in the back.
I would say that someone who's seeking the truth should go into it open-heartedly, go in with an open mind, and don't disregard something just because of on the basis of what they've heard. And whatever religion they're reading up on, read up just wholeheartedly. That's what I would say.
Yeah, there's another comment back here.
My message is basically to the Arabs, who are mainly Muslims: just take your pride away and try to accept that the promised Messiah is not an Arab, and try to pray as well, because most of the Muslims already do prayers, and pray between you and God to guide you to the right decision.
That's a good point. Yeah, let's go from the front here.
I think that you were talking earlier on about how to convey the message to others. And I think from my experience, certainly having been a teenager and wearing a scarf and everything, I think without any attempt on my part, I become a walking advert for Islam, because there's an immediate reaction from a lot of people that, oh, she doesn't look like a Muslim, but she's covered like a Muslim. And that raises questions. And I think as far as just being a teenager and everything that I've been through, I think you go through phases, and I think converts go through phases as well. That at first, when you first become a Muslim or you first become more interested in Islam, you're very conscious and you're sensitive to how other people will view you. But as you become more into Islam and you mature in your own understanding of your religion, that self-consciousness sheds away. And that's at the point when you can answer questions from other people. And you need somebody, a good friend by your side to guide you through that. And then, inshallah, you'd come. My parents took 9 months to become Ahmadis, and from when they first started learning about Islam. And my mother always says that, you know, it takes 9 months for a child to be born, and it takes 9 months for an Ahmadi to be born as well. And she said that it is like having a new life. And when you come out from that, then you're in a position to take the message to other people.
Yeah, there's a point up here.
I think there's a couple of points to be made. You said 9 months. I was having the conversation with my husband the other day because he's doing tabligh with somebody at the moment, and he said, I feel like I should be doing it quicker. Things should be moving faster. And I said, well, Adam, how long did it take you from the moment you stepped into a mosque? And he said, well, actually, it took me 3 years. And I said, that's a considerable amount of time. Yeah. So you're eager to give this information, but don't feel like you have to give it so quickly so that somebody feels like they're pushed away from it. I suppose the other thing is we're very blessed as a Jamaat to have so many people who are willing to give their time, like you said, with the Qur'an. And he had one-to-one sittings, which lasted at least 1 to 2 years. And through those sittings, slowly and slowly and slowly, he gained all the information. But the learning process is a lifelong learning process. And I think for myself, I know I've got to be ready to give him that information. And I think for the converts coming aboard, it's worth saying, take your time. Go at your own pace that you feel comfortable. And, you know, everyone will be there to give you support.
Yeah, those are great points. I just want to come back to the panel one last time and just get your final impressions on the topics that we've discussed today. I want to start with you, Rubina, and just any final comments that you have.
I think we are very fortunate that we have MTA and we have Al-Islam, and through these two mediums we have lots of people who are of inquiring minds, that they come and they ask about Ahmadiyyat, and we see that many people nowadays have actually accepted Islam and Ahmadiyyat through MTA and through the internet.
Bashar?
Yeah, I believe that, you shouldn't force your religion on anybody. Just example, my daughter, her best friend, she's a Sunni Muslim, and she's asking my daughter, what's the difference between Ahmadis and us? They're non-believers, they're this and that. And my daughter came to me, Mum, how do I explain it? How do I make her see sense? So I said to her, just give her this book and tell her to read it. And if she needs any more information, then she can come to me. And since then, her friend is really into. Hopefully, inshallah, she will convert. She's still very young. She's only 16 and she's living with family. So I say just give encouragement as much as possible. And that's true in our Jamaat. I've always found somebody there to help me.
Yeah. Michelle, any final comments, last impressions?
My last impression is, and that I want to leave with everybody, is Alhamdulillah, I believe I have found the truth. And I believe through that truth I found peace. One of the things that is so critical to that is the obedience to Caliphate. We have a Khalifa who, the message is the same, no matter where you are in the world. There is no contradiction is the word that I'm looking for. And that really is the thing that was lacking in my childhood. In my childhood within the religion, there was lots and lots of contradiction. And I couldn't inquire. To inquire meant that you didn't have faith, and faith should be blind. What we have, and we are very fortunate to have, is a Khalifa, and we are able to ask questions, and we are guided. And we have so many people within the community, by the grace of Allah, who are very, very knowledgeable and able to guide. So this is really what I'm wanting to leave.
Great, thank you. Safia, last impression?
I think sitting here today, even myself, being Ahmadi my whole life, I'm extremely inspired just by the ladies sitting in front of me. Each individual chair is holding a whole story, a whole book, something that's being given out in the world to someone else just from the nature of the person and the experience that is there. And I think use your identity, use your childhood, use everything in your life that's brought you to Ahmadiyyat to turn around and hand that on to someone else.
Thank you very much. That's all the time that we have today. I want to thank all of our guests and our studio audience for joining us today. This has been a fantastic discussion, very inspiring, and I'm sure all of you agree that we've just skimmed the surface of this topic, and there's so much more that we could say. I want to thank the viewers at home for joining us today. Remember that you can join in the discussion by emailing us at the address on your screen. Our web address is mta.tv/realtalk, and you can also follow us on Twitter. Jazakallah for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.